Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
New York just passed same-sex marriage. How will that affect not only New Yorkers, but the rest of the country? How will it affect you in your community? I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. Joining me is Matt Barber, who is the vice president of Liberty Counsel Action and also the associate dean at the law school at Liberty University. Matt, some people might say, well, this is New York, I don't live in New York, and therefore how is same-sex marriage going to affect me? And others might say, well, I do live in New York, or maybe I live in one of these other 5 states in addition to New York that has adopted same-sex marriage. How's it going to affect me in my marriage, in my life, in my community? How's it going to have an impact on me? Let's just let everybody do what they want to do, live and let live, but let's not get so worked up over this same-sex marriage. That's a question that some people have. What would you say about that?
Well, you know, New York certainly is some of the last of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. It's one of the most liberal states in the land. So it's
at least New York City.
New York City, you're right. Outside of New York City,
outside of New York City, it's not going to be that way.
Right. And in New York City, as we talked about yesterday, many in the legislature, even some Republicans, were strong-armed into voting against the will of the people. The surveys and the polls show clearly, even in New York, that the people support natural marriage. In fact, a recent nationwide survey by Public Opinion Strategies, this is a group that polls for NBC, for the Wall Street Journal, and so forth. So this is a very reputable polling organization, shows that 62%, by a 62 to 36% margins, Americans said, quote, I believe marriage should be defined only as the union between one man and one woman. Only 36% disagreed with that. 62% agreed with that statement. You know, Matt, the left and the homosexual activists are pushing this idea of inevitability, that somehow the tide is turning and that people are actually in support of same-sex marriage. This victory for them in New York certainly is a feather in their cap and helps to push that false image. But the reality is that every chance that the people have had the opportunity to vote on it 31 times in 31 states. When it goes to the people, even in the most liberal states in the land, California, for example, counterfeit marriage gets voted down. So it's no wonder that they didn't want this going to the people in New York via a ballot initiative. They wanted it going through a legislature where they could strong arm and intimidate certain individuals into voting for it.
Let me talk a little bit about the question, how will this actually affect me? Some people think, well, it's not going to really affect me. In my book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk, I have several chapters that actually address that issue. One is, are children at risk? And in this particular section of the book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk, we talk about the GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. That was by Kevin Jennings, founded by him, who President Barack Obama appointed he was in the Department of Education Safe Schools czar. He's now gone just as a few weeks ago, and he's gone to Massachusetts to head up another organization there. But GLSEN and PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, those two organizations have a recommended curriculum reading for children.
Yeah.
And I won't go through all of this, but we have bullet points where it recommends children as young as 5 to have sex with one another. It recommends that it's good and healthy for adults. It even has information about adult men having sex with little boys.
Pederasty, yeah.
It
tacitly advocates, GLSEN tacitly advocates child sexual abuse.
And they do that
Absolutely.
under the guise that you need to explore and find out what your sexuality is. The fact of the matter is the Scriptures talk about there's one sin that's different than anything else. 1 Corinthians talks about that the sin of sexual immorality is the sin that's against your body. Every other sin is outside of your body. We know from Dr. Judith Reisman, who is now one of our visiting professors at Liberty University School of Law, that sex that is engaged in at a young age like that, or pornography that's viewed, pornography actually burns it into your brain.
Changes the neural pathways in the neural
pathway system. Yeah. And it actually has devastating negative effects. You talk to some people, that particularly males, that are engaged in homosexuality. You go back and look at their history. What's happened to them? Frequently, more often than not, there is some kind of sexual abuse or sexual domination or sexual encounter that's happened when they were a little boy. And it's a repeated story over and over again.
Well, along with same-sex marriage, we saw this in Massachusetts, comes the indoctrination in the public schools. The homosexual activists know that in order to own the future, they have to get a hold of the minds of the children, and they have to indoctrinate, brainwash out of those children the intuitive understanding of marriage and human sexuality that everybody is born with, because you recognize the binary compatibility between male, female. You see the biological compatibility. People know that attractions to people of the same sex and so forth is outside of our natural God-given binary biological compatibility. Plus, ask any little kid who's never been brainwashed with the idea of same-sex marriage, tell me about marriage. Well, that's where a mommy and a daddy get married and have little babies, and they understand. So you have to get that out of their minds. So you have to indoctrinate the kids in the public schools.
And that's where
this is a long end toward that goal.
And we've got story after story about Heather has two mommies being taught to little kids when they're in first grade or even in kindergarten, second grade. And then we also have situations where there's many sociological studies that talk about single-sex parenting or single-parent parenting, single mom, single dad. That, in fact, when you eliminate that one gender, you have no dual-gender household. That has on average, a negative impact on that child. Now, I was raised in a single-mother household. My mom and dad got divorced when I was very little. But the fact of the matter is I had to learn over a long period of time what it was like to be a dad because I did not have that model in my family. My mom, no matter how much she wanted to be able to do that, could not replicate a father. No matter how much you try, you can't do it. No. You need that dual-gender family for the optimal environment. Yeah. On average, children that are raised in single-sex households are more likely to have lesser education, more likely to have lesser income, more likely to have different kinds of emotional responses and conditions, psychological, and you can just go on and on and on. Children, boys raised without a father are more likely to be juvenile delinquents, more likely to end up in jail. If you go to the violent offender section of any jail and talk to the males who are incarcerated, they didn't have a dad or their dad was distant. You can go on and on. When you replicate the gender, 2 women, 2 men, it doesn't solve the problem. It further skews the situation because not only have you eliminated the opposite gender, you've skewed the view of the absent gender in a way that single-sex parenting does not. A single mom, a single dad still has a good relationship, affinity towards the opposite sex. 2 women have a resistance towards males. 2 men have a resistance towards females. So you not only eliminate the gender, you skew the view of the missing gender.
Well, and you affect the behaviors of the children. A recent study out of the University of Kansas done by an objective study, and no bastion of conservatism, shows that the kids who are raised in same-sex households, both male and female, they are at a vastly greater risk of actually being promiscuous or engaging in homosexual behaviors themselves. All of our reason, all of our common sense, all of the studies, all of our experience tells us that kids model what adults do, that moms matter, that dads matter, that they each bring unique skills and training to the child in circumstances. This is the way that God created it, and when we shake our fist at God and rebel against Him like the legislature has done in New York, there are consequences. I shudder to think of what the consequences are for this nation if we continue down this path.
In the book Same-Sex Marriage, I go into, which we don't have time to, the health consequences, and somebody says, well, there's physical health consequences, there's emotional health consequences. Somebody says, well, that's because of the society's opposing homosexuality. that's not true. Studies in the Netherlands, where it's very well accepted, you have the same kind of high rate of emotional, psychological disturbances that happen on a much greater scale. You also have, obviously, the threat to freedom of speech and freedom of religion, which we don't have time to address. But same-sex marriage will, in fact, put every household at risk. And that's why I wrote the book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. I urge you to get the book, but more than getting the book, where you can get it at lc.org or 800-671-1776, I urge you to pray for America. Because when you destabilize the first form of government, the family, it has a ripple effect on everything else. It has a ripple effect on our society. It has a ripple effect on the entire country. We need to preserve and restore marriage as one man and one woman in this country.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.